So what steps is she taking to ensure that this Labour government tackles the motherhood penalty?
I totally agree with my honourable friend that it is totally unacceptable, and this Labour government will deliver for women. Unlike the party opposite, whose leader said that maternity pay was excessive, a reform leader who claimed it was a fact of life that women coming back from maternity leave would earn less. We know the difference that high-quality early years education makes, and that's why I'm delighted that from this week, working families will be able to access 30 hours of government-funded childcare.
Show Secretary of State Mims Davies.
Writer and comedian Graham Linehan was apparently arrested by 5 police officers at Heathrow, then questioned about 3 tweets which he says were based on his gender-critical views, a belief protected by the Equality Act. Despite this government's claim to protect free speech, Mr Linehan has been banned from using the platform as part of his bail conditions. Can the Secretary of State confirm if it is now a crime in Britain to tell potentially offensive jokes and perhaps face armed arrest?
Mr Speaker, the Right Honourable Lady will know well that I cannot comment on live police investigations, as the police operate independently of government. But the Home Secretary has been clear that her priority and the priority of this government is that the police focus on tackling antisocial behaviour and making sure that people can walk our streets free from fear.
Yuan Yang.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Will the Minister join me in congratulating Reading's University Medical Group, a GP practice in my constituency which was recently awarded the Gold Pride in Practice Award by the LGBT Foundation? When I visited the practice last week, the doctors raised the issue of transgender care. Many constituents have also written to me concerned about ongoing barriers to treatment for young people needing gender-affirming care. So what more can the government do to ensure that young transgender people get the treatment they urgently need?
Mr Speaker, I'm grateful to my honourable friend for raising that work in her community. The government has commissioned NHS England to undertake an LGBT health evidence review that is being led by Dr Michael Brady, the National Advisor on LGBT health, and it will diagnose the problems we need to solve, making sure that we have evidence-led recommendations in order to improve better access to healthcare for adults.
Ian Solomon.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. A constituent with muscular dystrophy reports facing an 8 to 12-month wait for AGM Healthcare to deliver a new wheelchair, far beyond the 18-month target. So what steps will the Minister take with her health colleagues to address that really poor performance by AGM Healthcare nationwide, and particularly the equalities implications of that?
Mr Speaker, if the honourable gentleman would provide me with some more details of his constituent's case, I'd be happy to make sure that's looked into by ministers and he receives a full response.
Dr Rubad.
Mr Speaker, a constituent and mum's got in touch because she's lost her entitlement to the 30 hours of childcare this government so brilliantly rolled out, and the student finance version because she's doing law as a mature student. Can the Minister look into closing this loophole so that women who retrain mid-career aren't penalised?
Secretary of State.
I'm grateful to my honourable friend. We recognise the value of parents continuing in education, and that's why there are often available mechanisms such as the Childcare grant and the Parents' Learning Allowance. As I don't know the full circumstances of her constituent's case, I'd be grateful if she could write to me and I could make sure that we give her full advice on the childcare support that she might be available to her.
Sir Desmond Swade.
She chosen to champion the rights of the residents of the Bell Hotel over those of the local community.
Mr Speaker, that is just plain wrong.
Correct that whistle.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Parental leave is just as essential for families who adopt as those with biological children, giving vital time for bonding. However, many adopted families cannot access the same paid leave. What steps is the Minister taking to ensure equal parental leave for adopted parents?
Mr Speaker, that is an important area that my honourable friend raises. We know that preparing for and adopting a child is an important time in the life of families. That's why we've committed to reviewing the parental leave system to ensure that it best supports working families, including where that comes to adoption as well. And I'd be happy to discuss that further or make sure a minister discusses it further with my honourable friend.
Kirsty Blackman.
an equality assessment on how cancelling family reunion differentially impacts those from ethnic minority backgrounds?
Mr. Speaker, the Home Secretary has set out our approach and the action that we will be taking in this area, and I will make sure that the Honourable Lady receives a response from the Home Office on the matter that she raises.
Kim Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Shelters My Colour Speaks Before Me report highlights systemic discrimination and access to housing, from disproportionate scrutiny of applicants to barriers in both social and private rented housing. How is the government ensuring that tackling structural racism is at the heart of housing reform and this government's policies?
Mr. Speaker, we are determined to ensure that we have high-quality housing that is available, both social housing for rent and also that people have the opportunity to buy their own home. And of course, there is no place for racism within our housing system. If my honourable friend would share with me the details of the report she mentions, I'd make sure I can look into that further on her behalf.
We now come to questions to the Prime Minister. Dawn Butler.
Question number 1, Mr. Speaker.
Prime Minister.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, on Sunday, we won the contract for the biggest defence deal that Norway has ever placed. Mr. Speaker, that's a £10 billion investment securing 15 years of shipbuilding in Scotland and across the rest of the United Kingdom. Mr. Speaker, one day later on Monday, we launched 30 hours of free childcare for working families. Not only does this save working parents £7,500 per year, it will transform the life chances of our children, because every child will start reception with an equal opportunity to achieve their potential. That is a Labour government in action, delivering for working people. Mr. Speaker, this morning I had meetings with ministerial colleagues and others. In addition to my duties in this House, I shall have further such meetings later today.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Economically deprived high streets, poorer high streets, are flooded with gambling shops. The aim to permit legislation prevents councils from saying no. My summer campaign on gambling reform has received loads of support, including Gordon Brown, who says if we tax the gambling industry, we'll get £3 billion for our economy. Will the Prime Minister join campaigners and help me to end aim to permit so constituents like yours and mine can thrive?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I thank her for her question? It is important that local authorities are given additional tools and powers to ensure vibrant high streets. We are looking, Mr. Speaker, at introducing cumulative impact assessments. These are like those already in place for alcohol licensing. We will give councils stronger powers over the location and numbers of gambling outlets to help create safe, thriving high streets.
Leader of the Opposition.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I know the whole House will want to send our condolences to the family of our former colleague, David Warburton. I also welcome the fact that the Deputy Prime Minister has referred herself to the ethics advisor. She has admitted she underpaid tax. So why is she still in office? But there is not just a crisis at the very top of his cabinet, Mr. Speaker. There is a crisis brewing for the whole country. When was the last time the cost of government borrowing was so high?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, can I join her in her comments about Mr. Warburton? I think the whole House would unite on an issue such as that. In relation to the Deputy Prime Minister, she has explained her personal circumstances in detail. She's gone over and above in setting out the details, including, Mr. Speaker, yesterday afternoon, asking a court to lift a confidentiality order in relation to her own son. I know from speaking at length with the Deputy Prime Minister just how difficult that decision was for her and her family. But she did it to ensure that all information is in the public domain. She has now referred herself to the independent advisor. That is the right thing to do. But I can be clear, I am very proud to sit alongside a Deputy Prime Minister who is building 1.5 million homes, who is bringing the biggest upgrade to workers' rights in a generation, and who's come from a working class background to be Deputy Prime Minister of this country. Mr. Speaker, on the question of borrowing costs, they have risen across the world, as the Leader of the Opposition well knows. We are driving them down by getting debt down. That is hardwired into our fiscal rules. Those fiscal rules are non-negotiable. But, Mr. Speaker, I'm not going to take lectures on the economy from the party opposite, who crashed the economy, mortgages went through the roof, and a record fall in living standards.
Mr. Speaker, I'm not sure we would have heard all that sympathy if it was the Conservative Deputy Prime Minister who was being attacked. I remember when the Prime Minister said that tax evasion is a criminal offence and should be treated as all other fraud. If he had a backbone, he would sack her. But let's get back to the issue of borrowing. He did not answer why it is so high. Conservatives left him the fastest growing economy in the G7. Under him, the cost of our borrowing is now higher than in Greece. Why does the Prime Minister think this is?
Mr. Speaker, if it had been the party opposite, there wouldn't have been the accountability that there now is in place, because they spent years and years avoiding it. And she makes her claims about the economy under their watch are about as credible as her place at Stanford University, frankly. But, Mr. Speaker, she leaves out of account because she wants to talk down the country. We've got the highest growth in the G7. Those figures, I look forward to her getting up and welcoming that. 5 interest rate cuts in a row. And of course, Mr. Speaker, £120 billion of investment in the first year of a Labour government. That is a record.
It's a terrible record, Mr. Speaker. I stand by every single thing that I have said. He cannot say why borrowing is higher under him. I will tell him why it is higher. It is because the Chancellor changed the fiscal rules so she could borrow record amounts. She maxed out the country's credit card, and that has pushed up borrowing costs. These are their bad choices, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, former members of the Monetary Policy Committee are warning, and I quote, that we are heading for an economic crash. Why does he think that he is right and they are wrong?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she can't resist. She comes straight back to talk the country down at every opportunity. She doesn't welcome the highest growth in the G7. She could have got up and welcomed that, Mr. Speaker, but no. What about the 380,000 jobs we've created? She could welcome that, but no. What about the 3 trade deals we've got? Not only does she not welcome them, she opposes them. And of course, she hasn't welcomed the Norway deal, the biggest deal for shipbuilding in a very, very long time. She should stop talking down the country and get behind the renewal this government is delivering.
Mr. Speaker, he is dragging down the country. He is dragging it down. How can he stand there and say that he is creating jobs? Unemployment has gone up every single month under this Labour government. And if he doesn't know why borrowing costs are going up, another reason is that the markets can see that he is too weak to control spending. Now, we are reading that he wants to have another go at welfare costing. What makes him think that they will vote for it this time?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we picked. I think I saw that the Leader of the Opposition said, I think at the weekend, to the Sunday Times, that I think she said this: I've inherited a gigantic mess and I'm cleaning it up. She said it's very difficult, it's going to take a while. I know exactly how she feels.
Mr. Speaker, we're not the ones referring ourselves to ethics advisors. The fact is, he is floundering. Mr. Speaker, he is floundering. Perhaps he should have a read of the covers of the...
Shh. Came then, not.
Mr. Speaker, perhaps he should have a read of the covers...
Order. We don't want to start the session with somebody leaving, do we? If somebody wants to volunteer, please do so. If not, I will choose one. Go ahead.
They can do the fake chairs as much as they like. The whole country knows what a mess of the economy they are making. Mr. Speaker, it is clear that taxes are going up for everyone, except perhaps the Deputy Prime Minister. I warned before the summer that we would face weeks of speculation about which taxes would be going up. The former head of the IFS says this sort of uncertainty is actively damaging to the economy. And now we find that we have to wait until the 26th of November for a budget. Does he really think the country or the markets can wait that long?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, she said they're not referring themselves to the ethics advisors. That's amongst the reasons they got booted out of office last year. And she complains that we're going through the due process for a budget and going through the necessary steps. We tried a budget under their watch without going through those steps. What happened? They blew up the economy. We'll take no lessons from them.
This is desperate stuff from the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker. This week, he had another reset. This morning, the Prime Minister scrapped his 5 missions, and after scrapping his 3 foundations, scrapping his 6 first steps for change, and his 7 pillars for growth, the truth is this man has got no clue, 0 clue. But this is serious, Mr. Speaker. The Prime Minister's incompetence is hurting real people. They're losing their jobs. The cost of everything is going up, from energy bills to the weekly shop. This is a crisis made in Downing Street. Isn't the truth that he is too weak to change course and too arrogant to admit he got things wrong?
Prime Minister.
I don't know what social media site she's been on this morning, Mr. Speaker, but I think the chair of the Tory party said that we were the firefighters, this government. Well, in a sense we are, because we're putting out the fires that they created. They were the arsonists, the biggest fall in living standards on record and blowing up the finances. We spent the first year putting out their fires, quite right too. But now, Mr. Speaker, we're delivering on the cost of living. Funded childcare, £7,500 for working families. Free breakfast clubs, opening new schools-based nurseries. That's what we're fighting for, the best start for every child in this country.
Paulette Hamilton.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. The Mayor of the West Midlands, Richard Parker, is delivering growth and jobs by backing SMEs like Bogue Toys in my constituency of Birmingham Erdington, which has just doubled in size. Will the Prime Minister join me in praising this success and confirm that boosting ambitious small and medium-sized businesses across the UK remains a key priority of his government? Thank you.
Prime Minister.
Well, can I recognise and congratulate the businesses in her constituencies? Mr. Speaker, we've published our small business plan, which was very well received, includes new rules cracking down on late payments, much long been asked for, £3 billion boost to more business loans and fairer business rate systems to support small businesses. That's why it was so warmly received. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Sir Ed David, Leader of the Liberal Democrats.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On behalf of these benches, can I join the Leader of the Opposition in sending our condolences to the family of David Warburton? And I'm sure the whole House will join me in paying tribute to Annette Brooke, who served in this House for 14 years and sadly passed away last month. Annette dedicated her life to public service and serving the people of Dorset, and she is greatly missed. Mr. Speaker, we have all seen the horrifying images from Gaza. The baby is so thin from starvation you can see their skeletons. The bodies of children killed while queuing for water. The emaciated hostages still held captive by Hamas. The Prime Minister has rightly said he wants to stop all that. So when the one man in the world who has the power to stop that comes here to our country on a state visit, will the Prime Minister look President Trump in the eye and urge him to use the influence on Netanyahu and Qatar to make it stop?
Prime Minister.
Can I join him on his comments about Annette Brooke? And also in his description about the horrifying situation in Gaza, and it is horrifying. We're looking at a man-made famine on top of everything else. And that is why we're expending so much of our time with partners seeking to bring about a ceasefire, to get humanitarian aid in at pace, to get the hostages out, and of course to put forward a peace plan that can actually take us to a two-stage solution. And of course I'll talk to all international leaders about that. I would gently say to them that if he hadn't refused the invite to the state banquet, he could be there 2 weeks on Tuesday and speak to President Trump himself. And I'm surprised it's not an act of leadership to pass up that opportunity.
Mr. Speaker, I have to disagree with him on that. We are now debating this issue. But here's an issue where I hope he will agree with me. The European Convention on Human Rights is a British creation that protects all our basic rights and freedoms. Rights of children, disabled people, survivors of domestic abuse, victims of horrific crimes, everyone. It protects care home residents from abuse and families from being spied on by councils. But the leader of the Conservative Party and the leader of Reform want to join Russia and Vladimir Putin by withdrawing from the convention. The Liberal Democrats disagree, Mr. Speaker, and so do the majority of the British people. So will the Prime Minister categorically rule out withdrawing from the ECHR or suspending it or watering down our rights in any way?
Prime Minister.
Mr. Speaker, we will not withdraw from the European Convention of Human Rights. We do need to make sure that both the Convention and other instruments are fit for the circumstances we face at the moment, and therefore, of course, we have been, as we made clear, looking at the interpretation of some of those provisions. It would be a profound mistake to pull out of these instruments, because the first thing that would follow is every other country in the world that adheres to these instruments would pull out of all their agreements with this country. That would be catastrophic for dealing with the problem that we're actually dealing with.
Irene Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Scotland has a proud heritage as one of the world's great shipbuilding nations. On behalf of the defence industry workers across Ayrshire and beyond, can I welcome the largest ever export deal for new warships ever secured by the UK? And does the Prime Minister agree that this shows how, under Labour, we can build on our proud past to secure a brighter future for our shipbuilding industry?
Can I thank you for a question? Mr. Speaker, I was very pleased to get the call from the Prime Minister of Norway on Saturday night telling us that the UK had won this contract, beating off competition from the US, from France and from Germany because of the quality of shipbuilding in this country. This is a £10 billion deal, Mr. Speaker, 15 years' worth of shipbuilding, particularly in places like the Clyde. Thousands of skilled jobs in Scotland, and it does show the importance of the defence industrial strategy and the importance of Britain being taken seriously again on the international stage. Mr. Speaker, it comes on top of the record investment in defence that we've already announced earlier this year.
Robin Swan.
Mr. Speaker, I'm joined today in the gallery by the leadership of the Young Farmers Clubs of Ulster, an organisation and young people who are passionate about youth work, passionate about the rural countryside and passionate about the future of farming and agriculture. Agriculture policy is devolved, but the Prime Minister's agriculture inheritance tax is the thing that has them and young farmers across all the country despairing not just for their future, but the future of food security. When will the Prime Minister change course on the farm family inheritance tax, now that he's taking control of tax policy?
Prime Minister.
First, can I welcome the Young Farmers Club of Ulster to Parliament and take this opportunity to say to him and to them that we've invested more than £2.7 billion in farming and nature recovery. That's been welcomed. And of course, we're developing a 25-year farming roadmap to make the sector more profitable. Again, that has been warmly welcomed, and their future will depend on that roadmap. We'll work with them.
Bill Ribeiro-Addy.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This week, the Global Sumud Flotilla, which includes British citizens, sets sail for Gaza to break the illegal blockade and deliver much-needed aid. In June, the British boat, the Madeleine, was threatened and its crew detained, but we took no action. Can the Prime Minister say what has been learned from this and what steps are being taken to protect the British citizens on this flotilla?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, she raised a really important issue in relation to the horrifying situation in Gaza, and the Israeli government is preventing urgently needed aid from getting in, and that is why we're now seeing a man-made famine, and that should cause us all to pause and reflect. I have to say, we are working with other countries to get aid in by any practical means, but land routes are the only viable and sustainable means of getting aid into Gaza at the scale that is required, and Israel must lift the restrictions to allow aid agencies to deliver the life-saving supplies that are so desperately needed.
Pete Wishart.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. So the budget date has finally been announced, and once again Scotland is some sort of distant afterthought. A budget date left to the 11th hour because they do not know how to resolve their countless counter-bureaucrats. A budget date that has practically wrecked Scotland's budgetary process, leaving it almost impossible for us to pass a budget before Christmas, leaving great uncertainty in Scotland's public services. And you know what, Mr Speaker? They couldn't even be bothered to notify the Scottish Government, leaving them to find this out on social media. So can I ask the Prime Minister, how is this reset in relationships working out?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, he overlooks the fact that the last budget there was a record settlement for Scotland, £50 billion a year. And he talks about the support. We've just won this Norway frigates contract. That is 15 years of shipbuilding in Scotland. The First Minister of the SNP has said what about that since Sunday? Absolutely nothing. Absolutely nothing. I know we've got another SNP question in just a moment. Perhaps that will be the opportunity to welcome the deal that we won and the jobs now for Scotland.
Well done, McAvoy.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. Prime Minister, last year my online safety forum of children and young people from every secondary school and college in Darlington found that 71% of our Year 10s and 12s had been contacted by a stranger online. A shocking failure that our Online Safety Act will hopefully prevent going forward. Will he join me on calling on the member for Clacton and all opposed to this vital act to pick a side? Are they with us, parents and child protectors, or are they with the predators harming our children online?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr Speaker, of course, the honourable member for Clacton is not here representing his constituencies in the House that he was elected to. No, he's flown to America to badmouth and talk down our country. And worse than that, Mr Speaker, if you can believe it, he's gone there to lobby the Americans to impose sanctions on this country which will harm working people. You cannot get more unpatriotic than that. It's a disgrace. Mr Speaker, on the question of the Online Safety Act, that protects children from material on suicide, on self-harm and online predators. And Reform say they would scrap it. When their leader was asked, well, what would you replace it with? His answer, there needs to be a tech answer. I don't know what that is. Well, you can't run a country on don't know answers.
Dr. Kieran Mullen.
Thank you. Mr Speaker, I'm sure, like me, you got to enjoy everything UK hospitality has to offer over the summer, and 15 local pubs received nominations as part of my Community Pub Awards. I visited places like the Bull Inn in Battle, the Castle Inn in Pevensey, the Swan Inn in Darlington, the New Inn in Westfield, and Sigley Working Men's Club. Many of them told me how hard hit they've been by Labour's jobs tax, and UK Hospitality estimates 80,000 jobs have already been lost, and the Beer and Pub Association say a pub a day will close this year. Can the Prime Minister name a single pub landlord that thinks his current Deputy Prime Minister's employment bill is going to help rather than just make things worse?
Prime Minister.
Well, I hope he paced out the visits to all those pubs and didn't do them all in one go. But look, UK Hospitality has welcomed our small business plan, and that obviously applies to pubs. Yes, they have. And the reason is because it permanently lowers the business rates that they pay, and it tackles late payments, something they've been asking for a very, very long time. They talked about fixing this, but they never delivered. We're delivering.
Katrina Berry.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. My constituents have endured 4 major fires in recent months across our community, including the devastating destruction of Cumbernault's iconic St Mungo's Church. Yet the Scottish Fire and Rescue Service is consulting on downgrading Cumbernauld Fire Station, increasing response times and putting lives at risk.
Can I ask the Prime Minister to make representation to the Scottish Government to not risk lives with cuts to our vital emergency services?
Prime Minister.
Well, I think the whole House is sorry to hear about the awful fires that her constituents have faced, including the destruction of St Mungo's. And I know just how important that church was, Mr Speaker, to the local community. The Scottish Government have received the largest settlement in the history of devolution. That's £50 billion a year. That should be focused on the issues that matter to her constituency. And I will take this up and make sure that we raise it with the Scottish Government.
Stephen Gaffney.
First of all, I will refer to my comments earlier in the week since the Prime Minister's research isn't up to scratch. Mr Speaker, George Reid, who was a former presiding officer of the Scottish Parliament and an MP, passed away over the summer. He was a humanitarian to his very fingertips. He would abhorred the demonisation of asylum seekers, including those desperate enough to cross the Channel in small boats. Now, figures published by the House of Commons Library shows that those asylum seekers who were forced to cross has increased dramatically after Brexit as a result of leaving the Dublin regulation. So, instead of punching down and joining in with the victim blaming of reform and the Conservatives, will the Prime Minister reject their isolationism and look to rejoin the Dublin Convention like every other country in Western Europe?
Prime Minister.
Mr Speaker, there's nothing progressive about people crossing the Channel in small boats. Nothing progressive about that at all, and we need to ensure that that stops. On the question of the Dublin Agreement, I agree with him. We had a returns agreement with the whole of Europe. It was ripped up when we left the EU by people who made promises that that wouldn't be the case. We're rebuilding that relationship. We've reset that relationship. We now have a returns agreement with France. We wouldn't need a single relationship with France if we hadn't ripped up the Dublin Agreement.
Richard Berger.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. We're at a very dangerous political moment. Opinion polls warn that for the first time in our country's history, we risk the election of an extremist far-right government. We all have a duty to prevent that. To do so, don't we need to rebuild support through a return to real Labour values, through real action to tackle poverty and inequality, through a wealth tax on the super-rich, and through an ethical foreign policy that takes a strong principled stand on war crimes, whoever commits them?
Mr Speaker, look, we do stand at an important moment. We can have the politics of renewal under this government or the politics of grievance from reform, who do not want to fix the problems. They want the grievance to continue because the last thing they want is improvement in the lives of working people in this country, because they feed off the problem and the grievance being there. That's the difference.
Sir Julian Lewis.
Admiral Lord West was head of the Royal Navy, Chief of Defence Intelligence and a Labour Security Minister, and currently sits on the Intelligence and Security Committee. So when he writes in the national press denouncing what he calls the disgraceful decision to hand over ownership of the Chagos archipelago, adding that he does not accept that the move is, quote, absolutely vital for our defence and intelligence as the Prime Minister claims, should we rely on his professional judgment or not?
Minister.
I have the misfortune to disagree with him.
Thank you, Mr Speaker. New mums and dads in my constituency of Lowestoft tell me that one of the things they worry about the most is whether they can afford the childcare they need to be able to go back to work. That's why it's great parents will be able to save up to £7,500 a year on nursery fees thanks to this Labour government. Does the Prime Minister agree with me that investing in childcare is not only important for tackling the cost of living crisis, but also helps to remove barriers to deciding to have children in the first place?
Prime Minister.
Well, I thank her for raising this, and I was very proud on Monday to make the announcement about childcare. As she rightly says, it saves not just on average £7,500 for families in a cost of living crisis, but also, crucially, this is from 9 months, Mr Speaker, to 4 years. We know that under the last government, there's this disparity at age 4 between children arriving at reception, some barely out of nappies, others quite articulate. That locks in inequality for life. I'm really pleased that this measure that we've now taken on Monday unlocks that and makes sure every single child aged 4 gets to the starting line in reception with a fair chance of going as far as their talents will take them.
Ellie Challenge.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. While the Conservative Party deludes itself with the myth of endless fossil fuels, the rest of us know just how ridiculous and reckless that is. Extracting more oil and gas from the declining North Sea will do nothing to protect energy security or jobs. Now, the Prime Minister himself has stated that climate action is at the heart of his government's mission for the protection and prosperity of Britain and the world. So with a decision finally looming on the Rosebank oil field, will the Prime Minister prove his words mean something and finally put an end to this climate-wrecking project?
Prime Minister.
Well, Mr. Speaker, I did notice that the Leader of the Opposition went to Scotland, I think, this week to announce that if she ever became Prime Minister, which is extremely unlikely, that she would pull down £50 billion of investment in renewables in Scotland. This is good, secure jobs of the future. Absolutely reckless behaviour. They haven't learned anything. But, I mean, the Greens, of course, have got a new leader, unfortunately for her. And we can now see what they really stand for. Withdrawal from NATO at a moment like this, totally unfunded spending that would blow up the economy. They would block all planning proposals. And they've now got a leader who's made, to say the least, some very strange comments about women. There is only one party delivering fairness and tackling the climate crisis, and that's the Labour Party.
Alex Selby.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Prime Minister, in September 21, you met ex-Arsenal player Michael Thomas in Portcullis House alongside other former footballers of the V11 when I hosted them in Parliament. Last night, the BBC broadcast the V11 documentary exposing the fraud perpetrated against them and the financial abuse they have suffered within the footballing system. They have all suffered terrible financial loss, but HMRC are still chasing them for taxes from funds that were defrauded from them. Prime Minister, will you meet Michael Thomas and other players with me to see how we can protect victims of fraud and instead go after the perpetrators of fraud?
Prime Minister.
Well, I will, and I have met Michael Thomas a number of times. Of course, he's got a special place in my heart, having scored that winning goal at Anfield when we won the league, although the less said about winning at Anfield at the moment, probably the better. But the serious point is that these are sporting heroes who brought us so much joy, and they should have proper support from their sporting bodies on both health and welfare. Michael Thomas and others running a really important campaign to bring this to our attention. We do need a trusted system that takes the well-being of our sports people seriously, particularly those in vulnerable positions. And I know the Minister for Sport is in contact with the campaigners on this issue.
Ollie Glover.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. On a recent visit to the UK Space Agency based in my Oxfordshire constituency, I learnt of the huge value created by our space sector, generating more than £7 for every £1 invested. Given his government's decision to scrap the UKSA as an executive agency, will the Prime Minister guarantee its international credibility, its operational independence and its budgets? And will he visit Harwell campus to hear what our brilliant space companies need from government?
Yes. Prime Minister. Well, I thank him for raising this important issue and reassure him that we do want to keep the huge expertise and knowledge of the UK Space Agency staff, including those that are working in his constituency. We have already secured almost £300 million in contracts from the European Space Agency, and this will cut costs, reducing duplication, so we can really focus on growing this important sector.
Baxter.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Since the start of the full-scale invasion into Ukraine, Russia has stolen, abducted and indoctrinated at least 19,546 children.
Awful.
It's one of the most heinous crimes of this war. Can I warmly welcome this morning's announcement of an additional package of sanctions on those perpetrating these crimes? And can the Prime Minister assure the House that he will do everything possible to return these children to their homes?
Prime Minister.
Well, can I acknowledge her campaigning on this really important issue? The Russia's policy of forced deportations, indoctrination of Ukrainian children is despicable, and anybody who's heard the stories or seen the pictures cannot be other than profoundly moved by it. We have taken firm action. Mr. Speaker, this was one of the issues that we discussed, as it happens, 2 weeks ago in Washington when I went over with other leaders to ensure that we are all putting maximum pressure. But this, amongst the very many horrors of the Ukraine conflict, this is right up there as one of the absolute worst.
Jack Rankin.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Like many, I was deeply concerned that a police force deemed it necessary to take 5 armed officers to arrest a comedy writer from a flight. Some may have found Mr. Linehan's comments offensive, but that isn't the point. If you don't support speech you don't like, you don't support free speech. Will the Prime Minister commit to reviewing our speech laws to ensure the legitimate free expression is protected? And will he condemn the culture within the public sector which prioritises this dangerous and perverse nonsense?
Well, I thank you for raising this. You will have seen that the Commissioner has put out a statement in relation to the particular case this morning. I've been clear throughout, we must ensure the police focus on the most serious issues and the issues that matter most to our constituencies and all communities. And that includes tackling issues like antisocial behaviour, knife crime and violence. And we have a long history of free speech in this country. I'm very proud of that and I will always defend it.
Week where the Prime Minister has worked tirelessly to place the Clydeside, Glasgow, Govan at the epicentre of Type 26 shipbuilding. Is he perplexed, as I am, at the radio silence from the SNP and the contempt the SNP continues to show for the defence sector? And does he agree with me that that contempt is a contempt for jobs, it's a contempt for growth, and it's an 18-year-long contempt for Scotland?
Prime Minister. Well, Mr. Speaker, I am perplexed that the First Minister has not welcomed this. This is a massive deal for Scotland. It's 15 years of shipbuilding. I would have expected the First Minister to be holding a press conference to celebrate what we've done in relation to this deal. Those 15 years of shipbuilding, Mr. Speaker, are extremely important to Clyde and very other industries, and they are a reflection of the professionalism and dedication of workers in Scotland that they've shown over many, many years. And I would urge the First Minister to come forward and welcome this deal.
Sir John Hayes, final question.
I know you will agree, Mr. Speaker, that flags and banners in bringing national pride nourish individuals' sense of worth and nurture our shared sense of belonging. So will the Prime Minister take steps to ensure that across every part of our kingdom, alongside the Cross of St George in England, St Patrick in Wales, St Andrew in Scotland, the Red Dragon in Wales, that our flag is flown on every government and public building, hospitals, schools, police stations, railway stations? For every Briton deserves the chance to see a forest of flagpoles and the flutter of the Union Jack.
Prime Minister. Well, can I thank him? And I share his pride in our country's flag. It represents our history, our heritage and our values. And that's why we display it. And I was the Labour leader that put the Union Jack on the membership card for the Labour Party. I'm very proud to do so. It belongs to all of us. We should be proud of it and value it.
That completes Prime Minister's questions. Let the front benches turn up. Point of order, John MacDonald.
Mr Speaker, I'm the chair of the PCS Trade Union Group in Parliament. As members will know, PCS members from our security division, the House's security division, are taking strike action today. These are professional, dedicated and committed staff. It takes a lot to motivate them to take strike action, their sense of grievance. There's a clear difference of view between the management of the House and the union about how we've arrived at this situation. So could I use this mechanism to urge the senior management of the House to seek another meeting with the union to clarify the situation and to come up with a reasonable offer that will resolve this dispute, because I do not wish to see our dedicated staff outside of work on this basis, because they provide us with the security we need.
Can I first of all say I thank the Honourable Member for giving notice of his point of order. Well, it's strictly not a point of order for the Chair. I would agree that it's in everyone's interest to work together to resolve matters, and I hope that we can get people round the table rather than striking. I don't want to go into further details, but I think it's better we leave it at this stage. Well, thank you very much. Right. Before we come to the 10-minute rule motion, I wish to make a short announcement about the House's sub judice resolution. A coroner's inquest has been opened into the death of Simone White, and those proceedings are now sub judice. However, given the significant public interest in addressing this matter, I, as Speaker, have decided to grant a waiver for the House's resolution relating to matters of sub judice in respect of any inquest into the deaths of UK citizens or residents from methanol poisoning overseas. Honourable members may therefore refer to the case in the course of proceedings, but I would urge them to avoid saying anything which might prejudice any future criminal or civil proceedings in the UK. I now call on Laura Trott.
Thank you, Mr Speaker, and I'm grateful. I beg to move that leave be given to bring a bill to require travel assistance issued by the Secretary of State and other persons to include guidance about the risks of methanol poisoning and for connected purposes. Mr Speaker, I've been working closely on this issue on behalf of one of my constituents, Chloe Lassiter, who, alongside her family, Sue, Neil, Tom and Amanda, have been fighting to raise awareness of the dangers of methanol poisoning abroad following the tragic death of Simone White last year. As members may have seen from media coverage at the time, Simone was travelling with her friend Bethany in Laos. They were staying in a small riverside town about 2 hours north of the capital. It is a hub for backpackers travelling across Southeast Asia. It was here that Simone and her friend consumed 3 shots of alcohol offered at the hostel. The next day, both felt unwell, but they carried on with their plans. Hours later, after boarding a bus to their next destination, things worsened. Bethany fainted, Simone vomited. They were eventually taken to a local hospital, but doctors had no idea what was wrong and initially suspected food poisoning. Still confused and deteriorating, the girls made it to a private hospital. I can't imagine how frightened and confused they must have been at this point. But sadly, by then, it was too late for Simone. She started having seizures during dialysis and was eventually taken for emergency brain surgery. The surgery relieved the pressure, but caused bleeding, and the other side of her brain started to swell. The results confirming methanol poisoning were not available until 2 weeks later, but by then, Simone had sadly already passed away. While Bethany did recover following her hospitalisation, 6 other young people fell victim to suspected methanol poisoning, having drunk at the same hostel. 2 young Australians, 2 young Danish women, and an American all lost their lives. As the Australian Prime Minister said in November, this is every parent's worst nightmare. And my heart goes out to all the families who lost loved ones in the most unbelievably of tragic circumstances. Over the last year, I've learnt so much about Simone, who was a much-loved young woman. She had a brilliant life ahead of her, and it was clear from when I attended her funeral that she was deeply loved by her friends and family. Mr. Speaker, a year ago, like so many of us here, I did not know much about methanol poisoning, yet over 1,000 people die from it every single year worldwide. This is such a huge danger, but barely any of us know about it. I also went backpacking after university, but never knew about the dangers. And sadly, the same is true of so many of our young people. This must change. So, for members less aware than we should be, methanol is tasteless and is only a faint smell, making it impossible to tell if a drink has been contaminated. But when consumed, it can lead to a coma, convulsions, blindness, nervous system damage, and death. Medical specialists say drinking as little as 25 millilitres of methanol can be fatal, but it's sometimes added to drinks because it is cheaper than alcohol. Since their devastating loss, Simone's family have campaigned tirelessly to prevent similar tragedies affecting other families. Alongside Simone's friend Bethany, they've been raising awareness of the dangers of methanol poisoning, and it was an honour earlier this year to help arrange a parliamentary drop-in session on the subject alongside the member for Orpington and the member for Dartford. The family were joined by representatives from the travel industry, the National Poisons Information Service, the British Toxicology Society and the Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office to educate MPs, and the message was clear. Awareness saves lives, but only when government guidance is accurate, clear and consistent. Sadly, current official travel advice is falling short. In some high-risk countries, there is very little warning at all. Where advice does exist, it is vague and understated. Travellers are told that certain drinks might carry a risk or that they should exercise caution. Mr. Speaker, this is not a matter of caution. This is about a lethal and preventable danger. I appreciate that the Foreign and Commonwealth Development Office has updated the health section of the travel advice on its website, but we must do more to make the warnings clearer and more explicit so the information is more readily available to everyone. The government's Travel Aware website has an informative section on methanol poisoning, but more must be done to make that advice and guidance better known to young people before they travel. As things stand, you really do have to search for it to find it. My bill, supported by the members for Orpington, Dartford, Cheadle and Lewisham, proposes a straightforward and proportionate solution. It does not attempt to police alcohol sales abroad. It does not require costly programmes or enforcement. It simply requires the government to provide prominent, clear and consistent guidance about methanol poisoning for countries where the risk is known to exist. Other governments have already taken steps to warn their citizens. Australia's Smart Traveller service provides unambiguous practical advice and reaches young travellers through targeted campaigns. We should do no less, and we must not be left behind. Families like Simone's, who have endured unimaginable grief, are not asking for the impossible. They are asking for honesty, clarity, and actionable guidance so that other families do not have to suffer the same loss. We have already shown in this House that collaboration between families, experts, and parliamentarians can and does raise awareness. Now it's time to turn awareness into action. The Minister I know is well aware of Simone's story, and we've exchanged many letters on the topic. We were kindly hosted by the Foreign Office with the member for Orpington and the family earlier this year, and I thank them for their engagement to date, and I look forward to working with them as I know they understand the grave risks that are at stake. As Simone's mother, Sue White, said herself, if it can happen to Simone, it can happen to anybody. So let's today start the process to stopping future tragedies. I commend this bill to the House.
That the Right Honourable Member have to leave to bring in the bill. The question is that the Right Honourable Member have leave to bring in the bill. As many of that opinion say aye. Aye. Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. The ayes have it. Who will prepare to bring in the bill?
Gareth Bacon, Jim Dixon, Tom Morrison, Vicky Foxcroft and myself.
Laura Trott.
Methanol poisoning travel advice bill.
Second reading what day?
29th of May 2026.
29th of May 2026. Right. We now come to the Opposition Day motion in the name of the Shadow Chancellor on property taxes. I have to inform the House I have not selected amendments. We now come Sir Mel Stride, Shadow Chancellor of the Exchequer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I beg to move the motion on the order paper. I trust you had a good recess, Mr. Speaker. I'm absolutely certain that the Deputy Prime Minister also had a good recess. We saw many photographs of her down at the seaside, just off the coast, in a rubber dinghy, rather like many of the other photographs that we've seen over the summer, given the reckless policies that this government has towards illegal migration. She was probably celebrating, Mr. Speaker, the acquisition of another property for her property empire, but perhaps also slightly tinged with that nagging doubt as to whether she had indeed paid enough stamp duty. Well, we will get to the bottom of that in due course. But those, Mr. Speaker, who could not avoid paying the taxes imposed by this government are businesses right up and down our country, many of whom I took the time during the recess to visit. In the leisure sector alone, some 80,000 jobs have been destroyed by national insurance, particularly affecting those taking their first job, younger workers, part-time workers, female workers, jobs being destroyed. And while the Deputy Prime Minister was lounging on her boat with her wine, of course, this government was all at sea, like a cork bobbing on the tide, no control over the events that were swirling around them. And when it came to the economy, whilst eclipsed by the calamities around illegal migration, we saw the panicked reshuffle recently of the Treasury front bench. And I would like at this point, Mr. Speaker, to offer my congratulations to warmly welcome the Honourable Member for Chipping Barnet to his new role, but to tell him that he is joining a sinking ship in which the captain has just had all her authority stripped from her, and all his comrades down below deck are fiercely trying to bail out the situation. I'd also like to offer a fond farewell to the former Chief Secretary to the Treasury, Mr. Speaker, who no doubt thought he was very clever when he leapt off this sinking ship. But he won't be feeling quite so clever when he discovers that the place to which they have sent him is even more dysfunctional than the Treasury front bench. And over the summer, Mr. Speaker, amongst all this news of arrivals to our shores, we've had a cruel summer of speculation around tax. We've seen in those skies clouds of kites flown largely by the Treasury as to what taxes they are going to be putting up. It's all been tax, tax and tax. I'm reminded, Mr. Speaker, of the Beatles and the tax man. I'll tax the street. If you try to sit up, I'll tax your seat. If you get too cold, I'll tax the heat. If you take a walk, I'll tax your feet. When it comes to tax, Mr. Speaker, it's not so much good day sunshine as help. OK, it was a bit hammy, but it was worth a try. I was going to try, actually, Mr. Speaker, Penny Lane as well, but I drew the line at that. But, Mr. Speaker, it is worth examining how we got to this point, for a reckoning for our country is surely coming. This will be a story for all time. It started, I will momentarily, it started with broken promises. This was a party that said during the run-up to the general election that they had no intention of raising taxes left, right and centre, and yet within a month or two they did precisely that, with devastating consequences. Tax rises on businesses that stifled growth. They talked down the economy. They talked down the economy by confecting this £22 billion black hole that did not exist. And what irony that it was they that brought in the OBR to decide whether that £22 billion black hole existed, and it was the OBR themselves that said they could not legitimise that claim. They were wrong.
That's what he said.
And what happened with spending and borrowing? It got completely out of control. And the combination of passing on price rises because of the national insurance increases and the extra borrowing and spending has been higher inflation. We are an outlier, Mr. Speaker, when it comes to inflation in a moment. And that in turn has seen interest rates higher for longer and the servicing costs on our national debt now running at over £100 billion a year, that being over twice what we spend on defence. And I will give way to whoever it was behind me. Yes.
I thank my right honourable friend for giving way. Would he agree with me that this loss of market confidence demands decisive action from the government at the budget to correct it, and that decisive action cannot solely be taken on the tax side, because the tax side is what's driven us into this loop? We need decisive action on spending, and particularly on welfare, if we're to see some restoration of market confidence and to get ourselves out of this rut.
My right honourable friend, as ever, is absolutely right. The reality is, and you see it in the bond yields that there are at the moment, that the markets have no confidence in the ability of this government to actually get on top of spending. And we saw the farce of a government that came to office scrapping the £5 billion worth of welfare savings that were already baked into the OBR's scorecard because we had brought them in, attempting then to bring forward their own reforms and their own backbenchers then voting them down. This government does not have the will or the plan to deal with spending. And that is at the heart, and this is where my right honourable friend is so right, at the heart of the reason why we will all be punished and pay the price of more taxes come the budget in November. I'll give way to the
Mr. Speaker, can I commend the Shadow Minister for bringing this forward? The Shadow Minister has quite clearly shared the deep concern that I have, and I think everybody in this chamber should have, that government is considering further taxing property, despite that the Prime Minister committed to not impose capital gains tax on residents of this United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland. Last year, it was a family inheritance tax. This year, those who own property, those who have skimped and saved to have their house, those middle class, those hard workers who have now become the latest target of Labour tax policy.
Well, the right honourable gentleman is entirely right. Of course, if you get into a situation where you are having to scrabble around and look at property taxes, as we will be debating this afternoon, then really nothing is safe from the taxman under this government. I think there was somebody else trying to intervene. Yes, give way to the
Thank the honourable member for giving way. Could I gently remind him that since this Labour government came to power, interest rates have been cut 5 times. A vote of confidence in our Chancellor, fixing the foundations of our economy, saving an average family on an average tracker mortgage in my constituency over £100 a month. Can he remind me what happened to interest rates when his party was in power?
As the honourable lady will know, interest rates are one of the key tools in monetary policy, and they are applied to bring down inflation. And whilst there have been 5 reductions, and she is right, in the level of the base rate, there should have been many more reductions. And the reason is, the evidence is there, the reason is that this government has stoked inflation. We have inflation that is still been rising. It is at twice the level, or thereabouts, that it was on the day of the last general election. And when a government stokes inflation, you pay the price through higher interest rates, and that is precisely what has been happening. But yeah, I'll give way to
my right honourable friend, and he's right to highlight the massive impact of these tax rises on so many families up and down this country, and businesses too. Can he comment, please, on how we can have a Deputy Prime Minister in a government who has admitted avoiding paying the tax that she owed and continues in office, and this from a party which moved to call for the resignation of people for far lower offences than that, and is this not expose the rank hypocrisy which seems to run right through the government opposite?
If the right honourable lady wants to make the rules, she should live by them. And that will be a message which will go out to businesses and families right up and down this country. There is no way that they can avoid the juggernaut of taxes that are coming down the track. I will give way to the right honourable gentleman.
And in return for his generosity, I'm going to say something pleasant about the last Conservative government. No, wait for it. And the last, wait for it. Just the one thing. The last government allowed councils like Westmoreland Furness, run by the Liberal Democrats, to double council tax on second homes. It is right to do that because excessive second home ownership absolutely annihilates communities in the Lakes and the Dales, the West Country and elsewhere. But can I encourage his party and the party in government now to do something we should do much more to limit the number of second homes than that, and that is to bring in a new planning category of use so that like the national parks and councils can manage the numbers and save communities.
Well, I thank him for his intervention. I thank him for his kind words about the Conservative Party as well. I'm sure they're deeply felt and very, very genuine. What I would say, Mr. Speaker, is that what the Deputy Prime Minister should be doing is delivering more homes. And it is quite clear that the 1.5 million homes that they are claiming they will be delivering at the rate of 300,000 a year is not going to be met. And I'm quite happy at some point in the future to be proven wrong. But I very much suspect that unfortunately I will not be. But Mr. Speaker, where we have ended up is in a situation where we have a huge black hole looming. The National Institute for Economic and Social Research puts that at possibly as much as £40 billion. This is a recurrent theme with the economic mismanagement of the party opposite. In the October budget, the first budget, there was headroom of around £10 billion against the fiscal rule. That was blown, and £4 billion more by the time of the spring statement, the emergency budget in the spring. And once again, it appears that even that, and considerably more, has been blown all over again. And that is no surprise when it came to the U-turn on winter fuel payments, when it came on to the U-turn on the welfare reforms that we've already discussed in this debate. That led to unfunded commitments of around £6 billion. Unfunded commitments that the Chancellor said the Labour Party would never find themselves in that situation. That has simply not happened. And what signal does it send to the markets that this government cannot control spending? And in the long term, it will be interesting to see what the ABR has to say about their forecasts for growth going forward. And we've seen 30-year bond yields now, Mr. Speaker, in recent times hitting a 27-year high. We are paying more on our borrowing than Greece. There is potentially now a debt crisis looming. This country could be on the brink, and it is all on their watch. I'll certainly give way to the honourable gentleman.
Of course, this government inherited higher bond yields than many other countries. And right now, bond yields are going up in Japan, Germany, United States. Is the Chancellor responsible for all of this?
Well, there's no doubt that under the last government there was a need to support the economy, and that, for example, involved the expenditure of £400 billion, not least on the furlough scheme, which, and I don't remember his party at the time saying that we shouldn't do that. They were actually arguing we should go still further than that. And this, the Conservative government stepped in and supported jobs and saved us going into the kind of mass unemployment that many feared, worse than even the 1980s. And I take great pride in that. But we are where we are now, and what this government should be doing is growing this economy, stoking up business sentiment, getting taxes down, and getting the economy moving. And it is doing precisely the opposite. I give way to my friend.
I'm grateful to the Shadow Secretary of State for giving way. And isn't the key point here, and the difference here, is that we are seeing stagflation, so high inflation and the economy not growing in the way in which it should be. Therefore, we are getting the job losses that we're seeing and unemployment going up every month under this Labour government. Unless the government does something drastically different, this is only going to get worse rather than get better, which impacts our growth prospects and therefore our prosperity, not only of our nation, competition, but the individuals who work and try to thrive here.
Yeah. Right, my honourable friend is absolutely right. We're seeing high inflation, we're seeing anemic growth, we're seeing high gilt yields, we're seeing a pound that has been plummeting in recent times, and all of those are signals on the dashboard that are flashing red. Instead of getting a grip on spending and getting taxes down, this government has been out there pitch rolling yet more taxes. And over the summer, we have seen the briefings into the press have suggested tax rises on property. And the party opposite has an opportunity this afternoon to rule those possibilities out. And we should look to the Minister when he responds to do just that. Firstly, there has been the suggestion, Mr. Speaker, that there will be changes to private residence relief under the capital gains tax regime. Something that would strike right at the heart of our country as a property-owning democracy. People being penalised simply for selling up and moving home. It would have clear implications for bunging up the property market. It would have clear economic implications for causing friction in the process of people moving from one part of the country to the other, often in search of work. And it would mean that where downsizing would be beneficial in providing more homes for people to live in, it would discourage that. Now, the Prime Minister, Mr. Speaker, before the election, said that there never was a policy of this type, so it doesn't need ruling out. But let's rule it out in case anyone pretends that there was. So perhaps I could ask the Minister, when he responds, to confirm that he still stands by the words of the Prime Minister. Secondly, an annual tax on homes. What a tax on aspiration. What a tax on those people who have saved hard, managed to get onto the property ladder, and are then stuck with annual taxes. What about those who are asset rich but income poor and can't afford to pay them, and they're expected to sell up? Will the Minister, when he comes to the dispatch box, rule that possibility out and keep people's minds at rest? And if that was not enough, Mr. Speaker, we hear also that it may be that we'll be looking at changes to the gifting regime within inheritance tax. They're not content just to pulverise the farmers. They're not content just to pulverise the family businesses, seeing those businesses and farms broken up when they're passed on from one generation to another because of the imposition of the tax. Something which, in fact, it was a Labour government back in the 1970s that brought in the reliefs that this government has now chosen to abolish. I will in just a second. Inheritance tax is going to double in terms of its yield over this Parliament. And we say enough is enough on this side of the House. We should not be punishing parents who wish to pass something on to their children. Socialists do not understand. We do not all stand as atomised individuals. We work together as families, as communities. We care about each other. We care about the people we love. And it is right that we have the opportunity to pass something on to them. And I give way to...
I thank the Shadow Chancellor and for bringing this debate as well. It's such an important issue. Properties and assets are vital to the country, to people in the country. But specifically on the lifetime limit for inheritance tax and passing on, everyone will have heard over the last year the government telling farmers, telling family businesses that they need to get their affairs in order, but they need to plan. The lifetime cap, the limit, not having a limit on the lifetime cap was what allowed them to plan. If that is cut, if the cap is not in the right place, that negates every argument that the government have had in the last year as to why they think they could justify the family farm and family business tax. In responding, can the Minister please acknowledge this and rule out any change to that cap which will penalise these family farms and family businesses?
The Honourable Lady has put it brilliantly and succinctly. She is absolutely right. In their horror, in their recoil at some of the inheritance tax changes, that's exactly what farmers and family business owners have been doing. They've been thinking about the alternatives, and the 7-year rule has been exactly one of those alternatives. And it would be really heartless, an extraordinarily cruel moment if this government were now to shut that down as well. I certainly give way to my...
Very grateful to my right honourable friend, and he's explaining the situation in his usual powerful way. If, as seems likely, this government does impose capital gains tax on a person's principal private residence, will he then, as mitigation, consider whether there should be indexation allowance at least to provide some relief to the horror that I fear is about to be inflicted on my constituents? And my right honourable friend will remember that the Finance Act of 2008 abolished that relief on other property. I suspect the government will not be sympathetic to such a suggestion given what happened in 2008, but at least it would take the edge off the imposition of taxes on the sale of a person's principal private residence.
Right honourable friend raises his point in his usual very eloquent manner, and that is a question for the Minister. And perhaps when the Minister rises to the dispatch box, he can hopefully rule out our concerns in their entirety. But in the event that he cannot, perhaps he would choose to answer the right honourable gentleman's inquiry. Is it not the case, Mr. Speaker, that there is a clear misunderstanding from the party opposite because they have no business experience? There is no business experience on the front bench of the government when it comes to setting up companies, understanding the meaning of business taxes. It's simply not there. And that Labour will, of course, be talking now about taxing wealth. Do they not understand that if you tax wealth, you will get less of it? It is estimated, Mr. Speaker, that around 15,000 high net worth individuals have left our country under the period in which this government has been in power. And a consequence of that is that the tax that just walked out the door will require something around a third to a half of a million people on average earnings to make up the difference. It is not a case of good riddance to wealth, Mr. Speaker. It is a case of we should, as this party will, be the party that encourages and turbocharges it at every turn. If I'm an honourable friend, I will certainly give way. Thank you.
I'm sure Hansard will correct me. My honourable friend just made some comments around high net worth, high value individuals. I'm particularly interested in my constituency about individuals on low incomes, representing a city in Peterborough with one of the highest levels of 0 hours and chronically insecure work in the thing. Does he not agree that his party often wants all of the spending but none of the delivery for the funding to do that? He's talked about reducing taxation on some of the higher net worth. Could he also talk about which doctors' surgeries in my constituency would receive cuts under his plans, which individuals would receive no protection from employment rights, and how the people of Peterborough will be worse off because he wants to reduce the spending which will fix the foundations of this country?
Well, the honourable gentleman refers to spending and cutting spending. His party attempted to cut spending, of course, and entirely failed